Hey folks, I wanted to come on and say hi for a second. Welcome back to the Short Vol Show. My name is David Lincoln. So I'm here to talk about the position and do part 2 of my trading journey. And I guess the big thing since we talked last time was the president with the Rona. Very very news. We wish him the best. It's got to be scary. It just has just not been a good month for the president. Regardless of my political affiliations, I want to, you feel for someone getting sick, and it could be worse timing. Imagine being him and waking up, you're in the middle of this election thing and you're trying to downplay this stuff, and then, worst case scenario, you actually get the virus. So that's a bummer. Anyway, so we saw the market react. The news came out, I think, in the middle of the night, Thursday night, and we saw the market be down. Some people were coming on and saying, wow, the market should be down more. And, the reality is nobody knows what the market should or could be down. It's just what actually happens. And, how does this change the U.S. economy or the future for companies? Well, it's very unclear at this point, right? From what I've been watching, I think the odds are we're in a game of odds, and that's the way people think, traders think. But in as far as odds, I believe that there's probably a 98% chance that the president will recover. So that's good news. Just the technology and the medicine has come a long way since this virus first started. So there is a good chance that he's going to be fine. But this couldn't come at a worse time for the campaigning and everything else. I'm not going to bore you with that because there's a million news articles you can watch on that. What are you here for, though? You're here for the VIX and trading the VIX. And if you watched my most recent video, I changed my latest strategy from just being long VXX puts to actually selling naked calls in UVXY. And let's go to the charts and take a look at what's happened since I put that position on. And then I want to talk to you about what's implied in the title saying over the limit there. So here is a chart, and I'm going to get out of the way here as soon as I set this up correctly. Do I have it set up correctly? Boom, there we go. All right, so here is a chart of UVXY, and let's go to just a 5-day here. And you can see just here is Thursday, then the news comes out and we're up, right? Not a huge move in the grand scheme of world history. And so my position is I'm short a small number of calls, 3 calls. And I've discussed a little bit the reasons why I had this position on, but one of them is that volatility is already pretty high, and a spike is not as explosive when volatility is this high. Anyway, so we got kind of an up move, which faded for most of the day, right? And then right after the close, the news came out that the president was actually going to the hospital, and there were conflicting reports. One of them said that he had mild symptoms, another one said he had moderate symptoms. So we got a little pop, and the market kind of sold off a little bit more on that news. And so let's look specifically and dig into this position here. And you can see what I want to show you here is that I'm not sure if it's off the screen or not. Let's see if I can pull this down. But essentially, I have negative buying power right now, which means I'm potentially in a margin call situation, a maintenance call, where they would want me to deposit another $33 into my account to make it whole, as it were. If you look at the top here, it shows negative $33 in buying power. Now, the reason for that is as UVXY moves up, the buying power gets less and less. Now, what I did was I sold an additional 1 call, and that's what put me in that kind of precarious situation here. And you can see I sold one more of these 27 calls. So my whole position is next week expiring. And I'm going to switch this so you can see numbers. Short 3 of the next week, 20 calls. And the week after, I'm short 1 of the, I believe it's the 27 calls. And I'm short 1 of the 18 puts. So what happened Friday? So Friday, what I did was I mechanically executed what the strategy has been. And just to refresh your memory, the strategy is sell an at-the-money call, and then right before expiration, if that call is in the money, thus if it's going to be assigned, then roll that call to the next week. So what I did was, you can see UVXY 21.55. I was short the 20 call, so the 20 call is $1.55 in the money. So what I did was I sold. I bought that call back that I was short, and I sold the next week out call, which is these ones right here, the 20 calls expiring October 9th. And so I was able to collect 66 cents to roll this position out. And so when I sold the calls, the first week's calls, they were out of the money, and there was somewhere between 75 and 80 cents of value to them. When I did this calendar spread, when I sold this calendar spread, these calls were in the money but trading at parity. So that 80 cents, kind of helped us. It cushioned the fall. So instead of losing $1.55, these being $1.55 in the money, I lost $1.55 minus 80, which, it helps. And then when I rolled these out, there was 70 cents in these calls. So if you take the two premiums from last week and this week, if we were to close 21.55 next week, all of a sudden my whole position has broken even though we've moved up since then because of the juice which I've sold in these calls. So overall, my position lost $120 on Friday. But as I said, look, we're in a negative. I have negative buying power. Now, some people who watch this would say to me, all right, you're irresponsible. You're not leaving enough room for a big move up, and et cetera, and you shouldn't be in a situation where you could be in a margin call. And that's a valid perspective. I think it's important to show you that traders do things like this. I don't consider myself to have a ton of risk, so I'm short 4 calls. So the way to look at that would be ultimately above 27, I'm short 400 shares of UVXY. A little scary. It could go up $20 tomorrow or on Monday, who knows? But we can analyze our risk. And I'm going to try to straighten out the screen once again now that I pulled it down. We can analyze our risk by going to the Analyze tab here. And we can look and see, okay, well, what if UVXY goes up X percent? UVXY goes up 20% Monday, let's say 25%. I would lose $1,700. Which is, no fun, but it's not like blowing my account out, okay? UVXY goes up 50% in one. Now, this is in one move without me having any chance to adjust or anything. It goes up 50%. I lose almost half my account value. So that's a little scary. It's a level of risk, whether that's too much risk or too little risk. It really depends on your own personal risk tolerance and what you're willing to put up with. For the moment, I'm willing to put up with that sort of risk. And that's really down to the individual person. We could look at this position if I had not sold that extra call. Let's take a look at that really quickly here, and then I'm going to get on to the part about my story. So if we pull up our Analyze tab here is our position. And what we can do is we can unclick for example, we can unclick that last trade selling this call and put. In that case, if we look to here, we can see that my buying power would be my position would be costing me almost 7,000 in buying power. So I have 8,000 in the account. So then I would have 1,000 positive buying power if I hadn't sold that one call. So that's kind of the difference there. My delta right now shows short 255. Now, some people would not like this position. Other people might love it. Who knows? But it is what it is, and there's the position right now. All right, so I want to quickly just continue our journey as far as my story, and the thumbnail is from a SIBO 70s day that happened way back when somewhere, and everybody wore 70s clothing. All right, so where we were last time was I got a job as a runner on the floor, and I was moving to Chicago. So I packed up all my stuff. I moved to Chicago. I got a place to stay in a youth hostel type place, which was up in Lincoln Park. I was up by Halstead, sort of, and I met two people there. One guy that was actually going. I can't remember exactly what happened. Maybe it was that I started my job in Chicago Core, and this guy told me about the youth hostel. But either way, two people that became my dear friends I met at this hostel, and so we would take the public transportation every day down to the SIBO, and it was regular trading hours. So everything's based on New York City. So we'd have to I believe the opening bell would ring at 9 o'clock. And then close at 4. So what we'd have to do is we were in a booth, and so it was like the SIBO was set up where in the middle is all the trading pits, and around the edges are these booths. It's kind of like bleachers, and there would be phone clerks in the booth. And what the phone clerks would do is they would pick up the phone, take orders. Then they would print out a ticket, and they'd hand the tickets to us, and we'd have to bring them out to either bring them to the individual pits where there were brokers to execute the orders, or we would find a broker from our company who is walking around and bring out the order to him. It's kind of sad. We represented Chicago Core, and also we sort of worked for Morgan Stanley as well. It's kind of sad. One of the big Morgan Stanley brokers from that time and just passed away, Mike Kelly. Anyways, and so this broker that my friend Coles and I would bring orders to all the time was this guy. Well, there were a bunch of guys, but Jack Regan and this other guy Nemo we'd bring orders to, and there were about 5 or 6 different brokers, but and it was kind of fun because there was a whole social scene in the row. You know, the phone clerks, there was a pecking order. We were at the bottom, then there were phone clerks, and then there was like brokers, and then there was traders were at the top. And so we would have to walk around, bring the orders out to the pits. And, you know, I slowly started to learn stuff. And luckily, I had my fraternity brother friend who had initially gotten me the interview out in Chicago that I didn't get the job for, Mike. He gave me some help. And I actually stayed with him first, but he gave me some help in the form of, he said, like, look, don't waste your time down here. You're not here to be a runner. You're here to move up. So you got to figure out how to move up, and you need to educate yourself about options and trading. And so he gave me these basic books, which are still useful today. One of them was the Macmillan book. Let me see if I can pull it up. Options as a strategic investment. I'm going to pull up a picture of it right here. And the other one was, and I guess he just gave me that one. The other one that I always recommend to people is the Shelley Natenberg book, but let me pull up this one for you so you can take a look. Options as a strategic investment. So he said, start reading this. And if when you're just out of school and you're learning about options trading and reading these books, it has got to be the most boring thing in the world, A. And B, it's pretty confusing, right? And so I was like, okay, I kind of get some of it, and it was very dry. It was hard. It was really hard. So, but then I had this idea that I would try. I was motivated. I'm like, I'm going to make money. I want to be one of these traders. So I thought it was so cool there, right? So I started, there's like all these pits around, right? And so when I brought orders out, I would go around and see the different traders out there. And I started walking around, and at some point, I don't know if someone gave me the idea or I came up with it myself, I started asking traders and saying, look, I will work for you for free if you teach me some stuff, right? So because, my job was done right when the bell rang at the end of the day. Traders had stuff to do before the open and after the close to organize their trades, calculate stuff, whatnot. And so I said, I'll work for free for you before the open and after the close if you'll teach me something. And really didn't have too many takers on that one. Everyone's like, yeah, whatever. But one guy, he said, I might know somebody who needs somebody. Of course, it was him, but I didn't know that. And he was a cool guy, like ponytail. He looked like I guess today you call him a hipster, but cool looking guy. He was at the end in the small pit. There was only like 3 people there. It seemed like nothing was going on there. And so he said, I might know somebody. So I came with him upstairs after the close to this office, and he started teaching me to help him out. And what it involved was, when a trader does their trades, they have to keep track of what they've bought and sold and what the sum total of everything is in their position. They call it your position, the sum total of all the trades you do and what your risk is. And back then you can do a bunch of trades with people, but the next morning you get this thing called an out trade sheet. And right, it says, you might think that you bought 5 call options from some guy, but he might think he sold you 50, right? So in the morning, the next day, they give you the sheet of out trades, and it says like if stuff doesn't match up, if you put in that you sold 5 to some guy, and the guy puts in he bought 6 from you, it's going to come on the sheet an out trade. It's going to show you trying to do this and him trying to do that. And every morning you get your out trades, and you got to figure it out. Now, a lot of trades at the SIBO. In the equities, at least, it was between a broker and a market maker. There wasn't as much trading between traders. I mean, it happens all the time, but the majority of trades were a broker representing the public. It could be any of you putting an options order in, that would be represented by a broker. And the market maker takes the other side of it in general, right? So in general, as a market maker, when I've got an out trade with somebody, if a market maker, if the broker thinks they did one thing and the market maker thinks they did the other, in general on the floor, you're gonna go and do whatever the broker wanted, because they're kind of you recognize that that's the customer. Ultimately, our only way to make money is having customers, and you want to take care of brokers, because if a broker doesn't hear you, then you're not going to get to do any trades. If a broker's mad at you, then you're going to get pushed out and you're not going to be able to make any money. So when we have a mistake between an out trade, generally you're just going to do whatever, go the broker's way. Now, of course, there's a lot of exceptions to that rule. If it's a legitimate mistake, where the broker's made a mistake, then they'll just fix it. Each one's different, but as a market maker on the floor, though, you're going to remember every trade you did, and that seems strange to people sometimes, just learning about trading. But even if you're doing like 500 or 1,000 trades a day, let's say it's super busy, generally you're going to remember every trade and what happened, because that's your livelihood. And you know, traders are intense. They take this stuff seriously, and a lot of people have photographic memories. So anyways, just to get back to the story. So my job was to reconcile the trader's sheets. So he had a card where he'd write down all the different stocks he traded. He'd write down the different option strikes. So it would say, like, for example, Upjohn. He traded Upjohn Pharmaceuticals. It would say like 30. There'd be one line that said 30. And on the left, he'd write how many calls he was long or short. On the right, how many puts he was long or short. And you'd have to match. And then every morning we get this big printout, computer printout that was like that thick. And you go through and you'd find, okay, what's his position in Upjohn? And you have to make sure it matched with what he had on his card. The other thing would be to just figure out what his position was. Okay, so if you see on his card, most of his position is he owns all these 30 calls, and that means that he net owns options. He's having to pay decay every day. And, you know, back then, individual traders didn't necessarily have the tools that we have now with, you know, Thinkorswim. Now you can just go in, you know, we just did. We analyzed our position. We looked in Thinkorswim to the Analyze tab, and we said, okay, well, I'm short 300 deltas or whatever. Back then, we didn't have that, right? As time went by, certain firms got better and better technology so we could get closer to what you see here. But individual traders would just have their card that said you're long 15 calls, and you kind of had to figure it out. You know, it's like, okay, well, I'm long 15 calls that are at the money, so those are like a 50 delta. So I'm, you know, if I'm long 15 at the money calls, then that essentially means if there are 50 delta, I'm long 700 deltas. And so if you see someone's long 15 calls and they've sold and they're short 700 shares, then it's a hedge position, right? And so I would help him reconcile his trades, reconcile his position, and it was fairly straightforward stuff. And he was a cool guy, and we would hang out with his other buddy. His acronym was MUD. I guess I'll just give acronyms, and I don't think that he would be upset if I gave his acronym. His acronym was MUD. Another guy who is like his best buddy, his acronym was PEZ, and he had a clerk for him too. I don't know if I was necessarily considered MUD's clerk at first because, once again, I was working for free, and also but you know, we hung out socially and stuff, and he became a dear friend. And he started teaching me stuff, and he taught me a lot, actually. And it turned out, and he, you know, every trader has to have a clearing firm. There's the bank that backs them and ultimately guarantees their trade, because you're standing there with a badge. You could buy or sell anything, and somebody has to say in the end, whatever this guy does, we're going to take responsibility for it ultimately. And he cleared through Merrill Lynch. Now, the Options Clearing Corporation does the ultimate clearing, but you need a clearing firm, and he cleared through Merrill Lynch. And so when we went up to the office every day, he had a small office. Down the hall from him was a trading firm that had their own little office with all these traders and stuff like that. And they're going to come into the story next time, hint, hint, as I was very near them. And ultimately, MUD was not backing traders, so there was only so far I could go under his wing without, you know, taking the next step towards becoming a trader. But he was great, cool guy, and gave me a shot, you know, and I started to learn some stuff. So that was great. All right, so there you have the next installment. We'll see what happens Monday. I'm a little bit anxious. I'm thinking maybe I shouldn't have sold that one extra call. One of the things that I actually really like about the way all of these firms are handling this VIX stuff is they make the buying power requirements very stringent. So even if I'm using up all my available buying power, it's not a super risky position, which I kind of like that. I don't want a super risky position. So, yeah, if we had a huge spike Monday, and we're up 50%, I could lose half the money in my account, and that's a bummer. But in a sense, you have to risk something to make something. And fortunately, coming into Friday, I guess I didn't mention this, coming into Friday, I had bought out of the money call. So when, just to go back to what we were talking about before with the position, when we had that news that the president had gotten sick on Friday and the spike up, I had actually bought a few of the 24 calls Thursday because they were offered at only 3 cents. So I'm like, why not hedge the position and take off that ultimate risk of losing, half my money or something for 3 cents. So, and I don't think that's necessarily a bad idea. If you're doing the Bullseye strategy and you're short naked calls, when it gets down to like 1 or 2 days till expiration, buying an out of the money call for 3 cents, $3, to mitigate a lot of that tail risk. Tail risk is the risk of like a huge move. It makes sense. But right now, yeah, there is some risk. I do have some risk on in this position. It's just the way it is. And we will see what happens moving forward. Now, certainly, if it stays where my buying power is negative, then I could get a tap on the shoulder. They could call me and say, look, we need you to buy in one of your calls or something like that. But relatively not a super risky position right here. Although it is using up buying power, it's not a super risky position on the face of it. Think if you just to kind of expand on that a little bit, and I don't want to tempt fate, of course, but we had the news that the president got this virus, and we were only up 1 point, right, on that pretty amazing news. So 1 point is like 5%. So it would take a lot for us, I think, to have a huge spike right now. But I don't like it. Once again, I don't want to tempt the trading gods. And a lot of traders are superstitious to the point that they're not going to talk publicly about their position when they have risk on, and that goes from the smallest to the biggest traders. So, but I want to let you guys in on what it really is like to trade. So I'm showing you my position, with basically in a margin call situation going into the weekend when it's very uncertain. So, little scary, but that's the way it is. Nothing I can do about it now, and we'll see what we'll see Monday morning. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. You're watching Famous Dave on YouTube.